You're listening to the AI Executive Brief, and I'm Stephen Forte. Today's episode is the zero cost revolution. This week, 3 stories landed that share an uncomfortable truth. The price of AI capability is collapsing towards zero, and the companies that move fastest are going to eat everyone else's lunch. This is a Saturday special, a deeper look at 3 things that hit this week that mid-sized businesses should actually act on. Not theory, not hype. 3 practical moves you can make starting Monday morning. We're talking about running AI on hardware you already own, no GPUs, no cloud bills. We're talking about rethinking who you hire and why, based on advice from the CEO of the most valuable chip company on the planet. And we're talking about turning competitive intelligence into something that costs less than your morning coffee. Let's get into it. Story 1. BitNet B 1.58, and yes, that name sounds like a firmware update, but stay with me because this might be the most important infrastructure story of the quarter. Microsoft Research released an open source framework called BitNet.cpp that lets you run large language models on standard CPUs, not GPUs, not cloud instances, not rented compute from Amazon or Google or Microsoft's own Azure. The same processor sitting inside your office laptops, desktops, and servers right now. To understand why this matters, you need to understand how traditional AI models work. They use what are called full precision weights. Think of these as incredibly detailed instructions with many decimal places that require massive parallel computing power to process. That's why you need GPUs. That's why you need the cloud. The math is just too heavy for a normal processor. BitNet takes a completely different approach. It uses ternary weights, just 3 values, -1, 0, and 1. That sounds like a brutal simplification, and frankly it is. But here's the crucial distinction. These models are trained from scratch with those ternary weights. They're not dumbed down versions of bigger models. They're not compressed copies that lose accuracy. They're purpose-built from the ground up to be lean and fast. That eliminates the quantization errors you get when you try to shrink a regular model after the fact. The performance numbers are genuinely striking. A 2 billion parameter model, which is large enough to be useful for real business tasks like drafting emails, analyzing contracts, summarizing documents, and answering customer questions, needs just 0.4 gigabytes of memory. For context, the laptop I'm recording this on has 16 gigabytes. You could run 40 instances of this model simultaneously and still have room for your email client and a dozen browser tabs. Speed, 29 milliseconds per token on a standard CPU. Compare that to 48 milliseconds for Meta's LLaMA 3.2 or 124 milliseconds for mini CPM. BitNet is 2 to 4 times faster than comparable alternatives on a regular processor. Real users on Reddit are reporting 89 tokens per second on the smaller model and 37 tokens per second on the larger one, using consumer hardware with about 1.3 gigabytes of RAM. And the energy story is almost absurd. 0.028 joules per token versus 0.258 for LLaMA. That's an 89% reduction in energy consumption. On x86 processors specifically, they're seeing 72 to 82% energy savings. Your electricity bill barely notices this thing is running. Now let's talk about what this actually means for your balance sheet. According to the Xylo 2026 SaaS Management Index, organizations spent an average of $1.2 million on AI native applications last year, a 108% increase year over year. Cloud costs are now the number 2 expense at mid-sized technology companies, right behind labor. And AI workloads specifically make up 22% of those cloud bills. If you're running production AI in the cloud today, you're probably looking at $10,000 to $50,000 a month. GPU hardware, $1,000 per card minimum, and NVIDIA enterprise cards run $10,000 and up. BitNet doesn't eliminate all of that overnight, but it moves a significant chunk of your AI inference workload to hardware you've already depreciated. The marginal cost of running those models drops to essentially zero. No more token shock, and that industry term for the moment your CFO sees the variable usage-based cloud bill and loses their mind. Flat infrastructure cost, predictable, already paid for, and there's a privacy argument that for many of you is worth more than the cost savings. When your AI runs locally, customer data, proprietary processes, financial models, competitive strategies, none of it leaves the building. no API calls to third-party servers, no data processing agreements to negotiate, no wondering whether your confidential information is being used to train someone else's model. For leaders in healthcare, financial services, legal, or defense contracting, this isn't a nice to have. It's the difference between being able to use AI and not. The practical use cases are exactly the unglamorous, high-volume tasks that mid-market companies deal with every day. Customer service automation, product description generation, internal knowledge bases, contract review, email drafting, inventory forecasting. These aren't moonshot applications. They're the blocking and tackling of business operations now running on equipment that's already sitting in your server room. Here's the adoption context. 57% of small and mid-sized businesses now invest in AI, up from 36% just 3 years ago. But 34% still cite budget constraints as the primary barrier to adoption. Among those already using AI, 66% report saving $500 to $2,000 monthly. BitNet doesn't just lower the budget barrier, it removes it entirely. The software is free and open source with over 33,000 stars on GitHub. The hardware is already in your building. The cost of not trying this is now harder to justify than the cost of trying it. Story 2. Jensen Huang wants you to hire people who bomb the S8. NVIDIA's CEO has been making a provocative argument, and it's one that should fundamentally change how every leader thinks about talent strategy. Here's what he said, and I'm quoting directly, "The definition of smart is somebody who's intelligent and solves problems technically, but I find it's a commodity, and we're about to prove artificial intelligence is able to handle that part easiest." Pause on that for a second. The CEO of the most valuable semiconductor company on Earth, a company built entirely on raw technical horsepower, a company whose GPUs power nearly every AI system on the planet, is telling you that technical problem solving is becoming a commodity. He went further. He said, everybody thought software programming was the ultimate smart profession. Look, what is the first thing that AI solved? Software programming. His alternative to the traditional definition of smart, something he calls vibe sensing. His exact words, I think long-term the definition of smart is someone who sits at the intersection of being technically astute, but human empathy, and having the ability to infer the unspoken around the corners, the unknowables. And then people who are able to see around corners are truly smart. Their value is incredible. To be able to preempt problems before they show up just because you feel the vibe. And then the line that made headlines, that person might actually score horribly on the SAT. Before you dismiss this as Silicon Valley philosophizing from someone who can afford to be philosophical, look at what's already happening across the industry. Satya Nadella says 20 to 30% of code on some Microsoft projects is now AI generated. Elon Musk predicts coding as a standalone profession effectively ends by late 2026. The industry has coined the term vibe coding, trusting AI to generate entire sections of software with minimal human oversight. This isn't a prediction anymore. It's the current state of play. So, what exactly is vibe sensing in practical terms? Huang describes it as the combination of data, analysis, first principles, life experience, wisdom, and sensing other people. It's your operations lead who feels that a supplier is struggling before invoices start getting delayed. They notice something in the tone of an email, the slight hesitation in a phone call, the shipment that arrived fine, but a day later than usual. It's your sales director who senses when a key account is drifting before the CRM data flags it, because the client's CFO skipped the last quarterly review and their procurement team stopped returning calls promptly. These instincts used to be classified as the soft stuff, nice to have competencies you couldn't easily quantify on a resume or test in an interview. Now they're becoming the hard stuff because AI handles the spreadsheets, the code, the data analysis, the document reviews, the financial modeling. What it cannot do, at least not yet, is walk into a boardroom and feel that something is off. It can't read the room when a negotiation is about to go sideways. It can't sense that your best engineer is about to quit before they've even updated their LinkedIn profile. Here's the mid-market implication, and it's urgent. Research from Harvard and Johns Hopkins shows that AI is augmenting rather than replacing human work broadly. But the nuance matters. Junior level routine tasks are getting automated first. Data entry, basic coding, design work, document reviews. That's exactly the work companies have traditionally used to train their future leaders. Harvard Business Review is already sounding the alarm. Eliminating junior roles saves money in the short term but creates a leadership pipeline crisis down the road. You need people doing entry-level work to develop the judgment, the pattern recognition, and the instincts that make them valuable executives later. Cut those roles to save payroll today, and you hollow out your bench for 5 years from now. That's not strategy. That's a slow motion talent implosion. The practical moves here are clear. Stop over-indexing on technical credentials in your hiring. The person who can read a room, anticipate a client defection, sense a supply chain disruption before the data confirms it. That's your highest value hire. Invest in developing your team's domain expertise alongside AI fluency, not instead of human skills. Protect your junior development pipeline even as you automate their current tasks. Find new ways for them to build judgment. The mid-market CEO who senses market shifts before competitors have dashboards showing them, that's the moat that actually scales. No amount of compute can replicate it. Huang put it perfectly. The programming language of the future is human. Coming from a man who made his fortune selling the hardware that runs code, that's not a throwaway line. That's a warning. Story 3. Cloudflare just turned competitive intelligence into a utility bill. On March 10th, Cloudflare launched a new feature in their browser rendering service, a crawl endpoint, one API call, one URL, and it automatically collects an entire website, returns the content in HTML, Markdown, or structured JSON. It handles JavaScript-heavy sites through headless browser rendering. It respects robots.txt and self-identifies as a bot, ethical by design. And it runs asynchronously, meaning you submit a job, get a job ID, and come back for the results. Jobs can run up to 7 days with results retained for 14. None of that sounds revolutionary by itself. Website collection tools have existed for years. What is revolutionary is the pricing. Cloudflare's paid workers plan includes 10 hours per month of browser rendering time, included, already in the plan. After that, it costs 9 cents per hour. So 50 hours of intensive data collection, which is an enormous amount of work, runs $3.60 per month. Their free plan gives you 10 minutes of browser time per day for basic competitive monitoring, checking a handful of competitor pages daily for changes. That costs you literally nothing. Now compare that to what exists today. Firecrawl charges $19 to $749 per month on a credit-based system that burns through allocations quickly, 100 to 1,500 credits per query. Apify runs $39 to $999. Bright Data starts at $499 and goes to nearly $2,000. Scraping Bee $49 to $599. Import.io $299 and up. The specialized tools that mid-market companies have been paying for to monitor competitors, track pricing, and gather market intelligence, they cost 50 to 500 times more than what Cloudflare just made available in open beta. And the capabilities are not stripped down to match the price. You get crawl depth controls. Page limits up to 100,000 include and exclude URL patterns. Incremental crawling that skips unchanged pages to save time and cost. Authentication support for sites that require credentials. Static mode for simple sites that's currently free during beta. The Cloudflare dev announcement on March 10th pulled 1.7 million views. The developer community immediately recognized what this means. Here's where it gets genuinely exciting for leaders. Think about what you can build with this. Competitive intelligence on autopilot. Schedule weekly crawls of your 5 biggest competitors' websites. Track their pricing changes, new product launches, messaging shifts, job postings, leadership changes. Pipe that structured JSON data into an AI analysis tool, even a local one running on BitNet from Story 1, and have it flag anything significant with a summary. A mid-size retailer doing this could catch competitor price drops the same day they happen and respond with targeted promotions before customers even notice. Total monthly infrastructure cost for this entire capability, effectively zero. Or build an internal AI knowledge assistant. Crawl your entire product catalog, documentation, support articles, and knowledge base. Feed that into a retrieval augmented generation pipeline. Now your customer service team has an AI assistant that actually knows your products, not generic chatbot responses, but answers grounded in your specific data, your specific policies, your specific product details, updated automatically with incremental crawls that skip anything that hasn't changed. Your customers get better answers. Your support team handles more volume. Your costs go down, or automate market research entirely. Crawl industry news sites, supplier pages, regulatory updates, trade publications. Get structured JSON output that feeds directly into dashboards or AI analysis tools. What used to require a dedicated analyst spending 20 hours a week or an expensive subscription service running thousands of dollars annually now runs on autopilot for the cost of a cup of coffee per month. This isn't a toy, it's enterprise-grade data collection infrastructure at consumer pricing, and it's available today on both free and paid Cloudflare plans. So here's where all three of these stories converge, and this is the part I'd encourage you to really sit with. BitNet makes AI inference nearly free. Run it on hardware you already own. Cloudflare makes data acquisition nearly free. Collect and structure information for pennies. And Jensen Huang is telling you that the technical skills companies use to pay a premium for the coding, the analysis, the data processing, the financial modeling, AI is handling those faster and cheaper every single quarter. The cost of AI capability is collapsing. Not slowly, not eventually. This quarter, a 2 billion parameter model runs on a laptop for $0. Comprehensive competitive intelligence on 5 websites costs $3.60 per month. 20 to 30% of production code is already written by machines. 66% of businesses using AI report saving $500 to $2,000 every month. So what's left? What's the competitive moat when the tools are essentially free and everyone has access to the same technology? It's judgment, it's speed, it's the ability to see around corners, to sense what's coming before the data confirms it. The mid-market advantage has always been agility. You can move faster than the enterprises weighed down by their own bureaucracy and hit harder than the startups burning through runway. But that advantage only materializes if you actually move. The technology is not waiting for your next quarterly planning session. A competitor who deploys BitNet on their existing hardware this month pipes Cloudflare data into their competitive analysis next month and starts hiring for vibe sensing instead of just technical pedigree. That competitor just built a capability stack that cost them almost nothing and will take you a year to replicate. The tools are free. The data is free. The only thing that costs anything now is hesitation. That's the AI Executive Brief for Saturday, March 14th, 2026. I'm Stephen Forte. If this hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll be back Monday with more. Until then, stay sharp.